And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of HBS Legal Trends. I'm John Ray, and we have a terrific show today, and it's quite timely on the legal implications of using artificial intelligence, AI, in your business. And with us, we have the two practice leaders of the data privacy and cybersecurity practice area of Hall Booth Smith with us, Richard Sheinis and Jade Davis. Richard, Jade, welcome.
Good afternoon, John. Good to be with you today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jade. Thanks, Richard. Thanks to both of you for being here. Let's maybe the way to start is cover some basics. I don't think it's too basic a question to simply ask what is artificial intelligence, because there's a lot of information out there, some of which is appropriate and some of which is not. Let's talk about that first.
So artificial intelligence has been around for years. It's now become popularized mainstream, but essentially it's any sort of computer system that's used to perform tasks that require human intelligence, but it's doing it automatically by using visual perception, speech recognition, facial recognition. And now we have deep machine learning, which also adds to machine decision making once it receives inputs.
So you say it's been around a few years. Now, see, that's news to some people, right, Jade? Because a lot of people think, oh, this is just something I've heard of in the last year or so, and they associate it with ChatGPT. Talk about where we've been using AI for some time and maybe just haven't realized it.
Yeah, so our Face ID on our phones is a good example. It uses, it can see in 3D. Mm-hmm. It actually takes a 3D visualization graphic. It's like 30,000 infrared dots. And that's how it can tell if it's you unlocking your phone. Social media, right? Everyone's on social media. Mm-hmm. My login to the same social media homepage, for example, Facebook, will look completely different from yours because it's personalized. And there's an algorithm that carries it based on people I'm connected to, things that I search. Email, spam filtering. AI is involved in spam filtering. Google searches. It's personalized. So even though you can find some rankings on Google, depending on your history of searching, Google will actually personalize your search. Voice assistants, smart home devices like Alexa, that's AI. So it's been here. We're just not really thinking about it in that way.
Yeah, for sure. But you mentioned something there that probably also needs a definition. You mentioned machine learning. So what's the difference between machine learning and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. It's basically where you are training a machine to learn information and improve performance over time. So, for example, yesterday I went to the doctor's office and the doctor was super excited to tell me about this AI tool that they recently found out from a colleague that will listen to the entire visit. And he was super excited about it because typically he would have to type in his notes after the visit or he would dictate. Whereas this AI tool did more than dictation. It listened to the entire visit, and I was able to see the summary at the end where there may have been a subject talked about throughout the visit. It sort of compiled it. And then after the visit, and after he turned it off, because I didn't want to interrupt the visit, I explained to him the implications, of physician-client confidentiality, all those things. He was completely baffled and didn't think about it, right? So these are cool, quick tools that we're using, and they're going to the next level with machine learning.
Oh boy, when you brought up HIPAA violations, that really got
Oh,
some attention there, didn't it?
oh yeah. He was like, "Oh, what do you mean? I mean, it's my account." And I'm like, "Yeah, but did the practice, approve that? Do you know what the policies are?" And he was just completely floored about it and said he was going to take it to some charge to figure out what they can do that would be HIPAA compliant.
I think you did more for him than he did for you that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Potentially. Wow. Well, so we know that this technology is being rapidly assimilated. It's growing. Its tentacles are going throughout business. Talk about, just give us a sense of that growth, if you will.
Yeah, it's been astronomical. I mean, I think a few years ago, there were projections that we would go to 27 billion. And from there, we'd be at, 200 reality. We've surpassed that. Now the projections are quadruple that.
Hmm.
And even today, there's not much that we're using from a technological standpoint that isn't incorporating AI. It's inevitable. We're going to have to use it in some respects. We're already using it now. And so it's really important that we figure out the best way to do so that we can limit liability.
Right. What are I mean, there are a lot of different angles to this that you can, and directions that you can go. What, I mean, and those include, like, whether it's voice recognition, chat bots, it B2B matchmaking. I mean, there's a whole lot of different aspects where AI plays out. So how do you counsel clients about the directions that they should go? I mean, there's a business case, there's also a legal issue with each of these, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So my colleague Rich is really good at this. We'll get on the phone with the client, and the first question is, what are you currently doing? When you think about AI, what do you think you actually want to use it for? What would you like to do more in your business? What things are you looking at or trending? And because there may be things that they may not know that are actually capable or AI centric. And once we figure out what the goals are for the business or the organization and where they're going, they may already be using some format of it. We can help them figure out how to use and do what they're currently doing, how to make that better, and then give them ideas and recommendations for other uses.
Mm-hmm. And there's a risk and reward to all of this, right? So, and I assume that's really what you're talking about in terms of taking clients through the risk reward analysis of all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, maybe 10 years ago, you could be on the side of, well, we're just not going to use it because we don't really know much about it. Sort of like email. There were people that said that they wouldn't ever use email. I frankly could not imagine not using email. I certainly wouldn't be employed if I couldn't get into my email. So it's one of those things that you're going to have to understand it to a certain extent, no matter what industry you're in. And given the current modern marketplace, especially from a small business standpoint, it's inevitable because otherwise you're going to be put out of business from a cost standpoint.
We'll talk about some of the risk in a second, but I'm just curious about when a company needs to have this conversation with professionals like you. I mean, there's a whole lot of tools that come out every day, literally every day. I mean, do I need to be in touch with you every time I'm considering a new tool, or do I need to have a policy around that governs what the tools that I use? How should I think about that as a business?
So that's a
John,
Rich, you want to answer that one?
Go ahead, JD. Do you want to finish up, or do you want me to? jump in?
You can start that one.
So John, yeah, it's really not a matter of starting over in a sense every time there's an AI tool that a company is interested in. And, one of the things that I think is important for folks to understand is AI is very unregulated in this country at this point.
Mm-hmm.
It goes back to, we don't even have a comprehensive data privacy federal law across industries. We have HIPAA, but that's only for the health industry, the medical industry, or something called Gramm-Leach-Bliley. That's only the financial industry. Just this week, there were hearings in the Senate. I think it's Tuesday of this week. And then yesterday, there was a closed door session where the Senate invited in what I call the big dogs in technology, the Googles, Amazons, Meta, and so forth, to talk about responsible use of AI. Now, they have these hearings, but there have been hearings about data privacy in the past. And in fact, I think Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas might have expressed a little bit of frustration saying, we haven't even been able to pass a data privacy law. We're jumping ahead now, getting into AI.
Mm-hmm.
So really, there are just no regulations from a federal, comprehensive, across all industry perspective. So it really comes down to each company being able to develop their own framework for how AI can or should be used responsibly and benefit the company without creating risks. Because even if there's not regulatory risks that one of the federal agencies like the FTC will come along and institute an enforcement action for a violation, you could still open yourself up to other types of penalties, like Jade was talking about a few minutes ago, with an experience with a physician. If they're using it and it's this cool new tool and this is going to be great, but they might not be thinking about the HIPAA implications of it, those types of things. So they can still run afoul. So it's a matter of developing a good framework for how it should be approached. And then anytime there's an AI tool that potentially could help out a business, they look at it within that framework.
Now, one piece of this that, and I want to get into some of the risk here in a second, but what I keep hearing kind of, in terms of boots on the ground, as it were, is that a lot of work is getting done by employees in the rank and file using AI, maybe using, let's say, ChatGPT, that maybe their bosses don't know about. So talk about that particular issue, or I don't know if you call it an issue or if you call it a problem, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, that's you hit a nail on the head there. And that's one of the things that policies would be designed to hopefully prevent, which is employees going rogue. Now, most businesses, they want to give their employees the best tools possible to get their job done. But at the same time, you want to make sure that it's done in a safe fashion. I'll give you some examples. Going back to the medical industry, there's AI diagnostic tools that supposedly can diagnose conditions, medical issues to a higher degree of accuracy than human beings can, or they can detect cancer cells before human beings might detect it, that type of thing. But you want to know who's doing what, because what if those things are wrong? What if there's no human backup, if you will, checking on it? And so it can create liability that way if you don't have some, guardrails around it, how it's going to be done. Other areas, if it's used, let's say in a business context, and maybe someone uses AI to create a business presentation. They're pitching to a client to get business, but it says things that are incorrect, that are wrong. What is it doing to business? How is it affecting business? Are they putting maybe confidential information out there? Get product from AI, you have to put information in. You give it some facts and it will spit back at you, maybe that business presentation. Have you possibly disclosed some confidential information in order for AI to develop that presentation? And then who knows who else has access to that confidential information about your business. So those are some ways in which rogue employees, without thinking, they don't intend to do anything bad, but without thinking about and knowing all the ramifications, can get off the rails and do some damage to the company very innocently.
Let's talk about specifically some of these risks beyond the issue of employees and their usage of it, and you touched on this in the answer you just gave, Richard. But the data privacy and security. What are some of the other data privacy and security implications of AI and risk that companies need to be aware of?
Sure. So on the data privacy side, something I've seen is a company wants to develop a marketing plan or a marketing strategy. And so they dump a load of data into an AI program to get some type of product that will develop a strategy for them. But in order for that strategy to be developed, the company maybe had to provide information about their current customers. What are the age groups of their customers? What are the income levels of their customers? Different things like that about customers, even down to things like IP addresses or email addresses, which are also personal information under some of our data privacy laws. So they're dumping that out there, and they might be disclosing personal information inappropriately. It might go further than that. Once it's in the hands of the AI program, do we know what the AI program is doing with it? Because let's keep in mind, the way AI develops is they take as much information as they can for the computer to learn, like Jade was saying with machine learning. So is that AI program using your data, which might be personal information of customers, to enhance their ability to develop products for their other clients, things of that nature. On the privacy side, on the security side, what is concerning is the bad guys have access to AI as well. AI is being used to develop malware, ransomware that most people are familiar with. Social engineering is getting even better with AI. Someone that I know received a call that they thought was from their daughter who lives in another country. The daughter said she got in some trouble. She was arrested. She needs $25,000. And the person I know that received the call was absolutely convinced it was her daughter that was calling. And she eventually, fortunately, her husband realized, no, let's check this out. And they called, and no, there was no problem. But AI created that phone call. So they could do it like that. They could do it in business. Call up a business and say, oh, by the way, you haven't paid that $5,000 invoice that you owe us. Maybe they get a check for $5,000, and maybe it was paid. And a lot of times those things won't work, but AI makes the bad guys badder. It might not be the best grammar, but that's what it does.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the problem of bias. That's another risk you've identified.
That's actually been at the front of the Senate hearings one thing that the FTC, and the FTC has already had enforcement actions regarding deception. That's really where they come in from the consumer standpoint. But it encompasses a lot of things: unfair business practices. What we see a lot now are fake reviews, things that are not actually from a consumer. And so some enforcement actions that they have taken are telling consumers how to evaluate online reviews, and if they aren't, real, or if a business is utilizing a platform to promote across social media and other marketing platforms to consumers with fake information, fake people, fake followers. They've actually been enforcing that. So that's been one of the topics this week. Bias also encompasses inputs, right? So we have to give foundational information into the AI platform in order for it to then begin to synthesize that information, to make it better, to combine it with other inputs from other users. And depending on what those inputs are, there can be harm. So, for example, there was a use case regarding recommendations for jobs, and they found that more blue collar positions were recommended for minorities versus other races. And it's a big deal, and that's something that everyone's trying to figure out at the top level, how you get by it. I don't think that we're going to get by it completely, because we're all biased, and we're all inputting information.
Yeah, and it strikes me that this is the classic garbage in, garbage out issue, right? That if you've got a bad data set that has some sort of bias in it, whatever form that bias takes, you can get a false sense of security by getting ready answers that look like pretty spot on kind of answers that you're getting out of that can really lead you astray.
Yeah, one thing that Rich and I have been doing is making sure that our clients double and triple check what they get, what their outputs are. So certainly you can utilize those platforms, but you also want to double and triple check the information you're getting. You want to edit it. A lot of AI tools, for example, OpenAI, ChatGPT, it actually provides, that you can't rely on the outputs. And so they're putting that in their own use policies. Unfortunately, people don't really read those like they should. But it's there, and it's important that before you just publish, you double check.
I am shocked to hear that people do not read what they're supposed to read. I'm shocked to hear that. Folks, we're here chatting with Richard Sheinis and Jade Davis, and they are the leaders of the data privacy and cybersecurity practice at Hall Booth Smith. Real quickly, let's talk about cost prohibitive AI. That's probably one piece of this that a lot of businesses don't think about, because all they see is free sometimes when it comes to using ChatGPT or what have you. But some of these tools can get expensive.
Yeah, that I think is just part of any of the business analysis that a company would do. A lot of them, I think they entice you a little bit with the free version, not unlike a lot of apps that I think we see out there that are available on our devices. And that's another area where you need some type of best practice policy within the company, so that someone doesn't just sign up, say, oh, this looks pretty good, let me sign up for it, not realizing what the bill is going to be. Just the same as you would not want someone going out and buying some $1 million machine to put on the assembly line without going through proper channels, Same thing with AI. I think we'll just see a proliferation and a little bit of probably some, price war type of thing. I know obviously Chat GPT is the popular one, but of course there are going to be more and more, and it's just part of the process of evaluating the cost.
Sure. Well, let's talk about good policies and procedures that companies need to have. Where does a company start there in formulating such policies and procedures, Richard?
Sure. So the first step is really deciding how the purchase or use of AI is going to be governed. Is there a single person that is over it? Is it a committee? So that when there is an interest in an AI program, it has to be brought before that person or the committee with certain information about it, including what you were just talking about, being the cost, how it's going to be used, what type of information will be provided to it, what are the procedures for evaluating the use of the product or deliverable that you get, and not just accept it, because we all know that there are errors that it gives. There's a story that somewhat humorous, but not really, of a lawyer, and I think it was in New York, that wrote a legal brief using Chat GPT and submitted it to the court. Well, Chat GPT got it wrong. It referenced legal cases in there that did not exist, things of that nature. And the judge caught it. This attorney did not check their work or did not check GPT's work. And the judge caught it. And this lawyer got into a lot of trouble. So it's that type of thing, so that there's some type of process to check the accuracy. Who's going to do that? So it's really a formula from who's over the program and what is the defined process for any product, any AI program you want to use. What does it do? How is it used? Submit it, get permission for it, and then keep tabs on it and evaluate it over time, not just for accuracy, but also evaluate it for maybe something like bias. Is it producing biased results? And also evaluate it for a cost analysis. Are we getting our money's worth out of this? So all those things to keep it in line, as opposed to one employee just saying, this looks pretty good, I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah, I mean, some of these things that you mentioned seem pretty, I guess they're kind of elements of it that companies would guess would be part of it. Certainly responsibilities and the scope and purpose of the policy. But one thing that you advocate is the reporting of it. And I'm just curious how you see that. I know every company's different, every industry's different, and their use cases are different. But how do companies need to think about the reporting aspects of that assure accountability and transparency?
Well, I think that there has to be, again, depending upon the company, a person or a team or committee that will evaluate the product. And at the beginning, it would be more on a basis of let's see the first time it's used, how this works out. And then as time goes on, if it's been determined to be a reliable product, then it might be just on a more random basis. But you also have to have the people who are knowledgeable in that particular field. Let's say it was in the field of architecture and using AI to design a building. Well, it doesn't pay to have me review the product that you get from AI. I don't know anything about architecture. Mm-hmm. You have to have the appropriate people that can evaluate it. If it's a medical program that is supposed to identify the presence of cancer cells in a medical test, well, you have to have the appropriate medical personnel to check the results that you're getting from the AI program. Because obviously, if there's cancer present and the machine misses it, that's a big deal.
For sure. So let's review some of the, as companies start AI implementation, talk about some of the best practices they need to think about as they do that.
So the first thing to start with is going through developing some of these procedures that we have talked about. And no one uses AI until we have all of this set up. And we work with a number of companies on developing that type of framework that is appropriate for them. Because going back to AI, it can be like a new toy. This is a lot of fun and we want to play with it. But if we play with it, we want to make sure that it's done safely. So it's really developing that framework. Who is in charge? What are the reviews that are done? And really getting all this down in writing, making sure all the people who have the potential for using AI are aware of what's going on and doing some education and continuously monitoring that process and reporting on that process. And the monitoring and reporting might get less frequent as time goes on and the product has proven itself, but it does not go away. And maybe instead of doing it every week or every deliverable, it's done quarterly. But always has to be updated and everyone stay within those guardrails. And you have to update according to what regulatory framework might at some point get passed.
Mm-hmm.
We do still have data privacy. A number of states have their own state data privacy laws, and dealing with AI is if it deals with personal information, you have to pay attention to those laws as well. So it's really getting that framework and putting the whoa Nelly on it until we get some order to it and decide how we can use it.
Yeah, and one of the things you talk about in terms of as you try to implement and then follow policies that you put in place, you mentioned reporting. We talked about that. Monitoring and enforcement, and also audits. Who knew we were going to need to hire AI auditors a few years ago? That sounds like that's in our future.
Yeah, it could be an outside person that does some auditing. It could be internal. I think it would depend upon the sensitivity and expertise of what is needed. It could also be making sure that it is compliant with any regulatory issues that might be there. NIST and NIST, they passed a framework. Europe is really more active. If companies are doing business in Europe, they are a little bit more active in issuing regulations or guidance with most technology and data privacy, and also with AI and the ethics part that is very big.
So as we wrap up here, let's talk about maybe as all this unfolds, what are some of the other pitfalls that companies need to be aware of? Maybe one way to answer the question is just what you've seen out there from companies that you mentioned the attorney and not checking their work before you turn it into a judge. I can't even imagine what that reaction must have been like. But talk about some of those maybe mistakes that you've seen that others can learn from. let's wrap it up here in terms of what companies need to think about that maybe you haven't already mentioned.
I'll just say one thing, and maybe Jade could add on to it. If I was going to put at the top of the list, it would be keep in mind that AI is not magic. It's not a situation where you provide information or ask a question or please provide a marketing presentation for us to pitch to a client, and what you get back is automatically perfect. That to me right now is the biggest risk, is just relying on untested AI without proper oversight. That's the top of my list.
Okay. Jade?
Top of my list would be making sure that you are going back to the drawing board regularly, talking with your employees, talking with your contracted vendors, making sure you're aware of everything that everyone is using and you're updating. Because if you're not updating it, you don't know what new tool or new thing, that new plugin someone decided to use and they didn't think about it. You know, sometimes you have these approved use policies, but often you don't think about it. Oh, wait, this is something I may want to tell legal or tell the IT department. And if those controls aren't there from a technological standpoint and someone can add a plugin or use an application, it's important that you're aware of it.
Yeah, boy, you brought up a whole, that may be a whole nother show on talking about how you intersect with vendors and other outside third parties that are using AI in ways that you're not even aware of. Right. So, wow, you've hit on a great point there, Jade. So, well, this has been terrific. And I can't imagine that there aren't some folks that, upon hearing this episode, wouldn't want to know more. So let's give coordinates on how they can get in touch with both of you. Richard, Jade, if both of you could give the coordinates on how folks can find you.
Sure. Email address is always easiest. And just for some context, I am based in our firm's Charlotte office. Jade is based in our Tampa office, but we work nationally. This is not the type of thing that is restricted to any particular region. And just my email address, rsheinis, that's rsheinis @hallboothsmith.com, and my office number 980-859-0381. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Jade?
Yeah, likewise. My email is jdavis, JDAVIS, @hallboothsmith.com. We also have a newsletter and blog online and content at hallboothsmith.com. And we have a page for the practice area. It'll include our information, other team members, and updates.
Terrific. Richard Sheinis and Jade Davis, they are the practice leaders for the data privacy and cybersecurity practice area of Hall Booth Smith. Richard, Jade, thank you again for joining us. And folks, just a reminder that HBS Legal Trends is brought to you by Hall Booth Smith, and the attorneys at HBS work alongside businesses of all sizes and across industries to safeguard data, protect privacy, identify potential weaknesses, and reduce the likelihood of breaches. Their clients receive the attention, expertise, and cost effectiveness of a smaller law firm with a full service and strong regional presence and national presence, as Richard pointed out, that's typical of a large firm. At HBS, the promise is serving to achieve excellence. Again, for more information, you can go to Hall Booth Smith. So for my guest, Richard Sheinis and Jade Davis. I am John Ray. Join us next time on HBS Legal Trends.